This is Ask Me Anything About Politics. So if you got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. So you can use this show as a resource to ask all of your questions about politics in a way where you don't have to worry about getting judged or roasted or called an idiot or uninformed or anything like that. This is not that show. This is not the show where we make fun of people or call them stupid or uninformed. This is the show for good faith questions, good faith answers, and productive engagement around politics. Whether you would like to discuss something specific policy wise, or if you're brand new to politics and you have simpler questions like you just don't understand the difference between the state government and the federal government. You don't know what reconciliation is. You don't know what a continuing resolution is. You want to know what the deal is with the filibuster. Who are all these people? Like who is Pam Bondi? Who is Kash Patel? What's up with RFK Jr.? Like all of these. There's no such thing as a dumb question. So it can be as simple or as complicated as you like. I don't judge people based on how much or how little information they have. I don't judge people based on their political priors. If you are a Republican or a Democrat, you are welcome here. There's no fighting. I'm not going to yell at you for being a Republican. I'm not going to yell at you for being different than me politically, either too far to the left or too far to the right. This is not that show where I call up people who have different political opinions than me and you know, then I yell at them and call them stupid and I try to own them. This is not that show. What's up, Triska? Excellent to see you again. Darian says, thoughts on Israel's conduct in Gaza? It's monstrous. It's fucking barbaric. It is, there is not harsh enough words to describe it. It is ethnic cleansing. It is G-side. It is all the fucking things. It's monstrous. It is monstrous. Yeah, yeah. But thank you for your question, Darian. I believe, a lot of times people ask me questions just to make sure I'm not a fucking monster. I feel like that's one of them. But yeah, any questions that anybody's got about politics, just put them in the chat. I know that it can be really difficult to read the news and see all the things that's going on, and it can be difficult sometimes even just to tell what is going on because there's so much misinformation and propaganda out there. Y'all can use this show as a place to figure all that shit out. Be like, what is really going on? What is a credible source for information? Is there any truth to this rumor? Stuff like that. So yeah, no such thing as a dumb question. Darian says Newsom 28. Danny is terrible. Happy Friday to you as well. Yeah, I don't really care if Newsom wins the primary or not. I think he'll be a fine president if he wins. He's not my first choice for a nominee, but he is. He seems very electable, being a tall, straight, handsome white man. He's got his centrist bona fides, which many people believe is the key to winning in the general election. So yeah, you know, I think he's fine. I don't think that he's God, and I also don't think that he's Satan. I think he's fine. Gavin says he destroyed my home state. Well, certainly I know what your home state is. I know that you've said that. I know that your home state is not California because he has 100% not destroyed California. Not the Clip says, what would Trump have to do for him to be a good president? Leave and go to jail. Like, full stop. He has done so much wrong. He has done so much wildly illegal, immoral, corrupt bullshit that the only thing that he can do right now to redeem himself is self-surrender to jail. Fucking straight to jail, Peacemonger in Chief says Trump doesn't need to go to jail. I think he does. Joni Calder says, do you think Venezuela will react to Trump blowing up that boat? They already have. They started flying fucking fighter jets over American Navy vessels. There's just a lot of saber rattling happening between the Trump administration and the Maduro government in Venezuela, and that's fucking terrifying. You know, we could be going to war with Venezuela. Who fucking had that on their bingo card? You know, Mo says, "Aren't politics up to personal opinion and not all stated in fact?" There's definitely some gray area, Mo, in politics, but I think where we get um, misled in talking about politics is in how much of it is not opinion. You know, like we know now that trickle down economics is bullshit. We know now that climate change is real. And we know that right wing news sources are wildly inaccurate. We know we know that Trump's policies are killing the American economy, killing the value of the dollar, killing the job market. Like we know these things. These are not up for opinion the same way that Everest being the tallest mountain is not up for debate, you know? Alrighty, Peacemonger in Chief says the economy is fine. It most certainly is not. Prices are continuing to go up. The cost of living crisis is continuing to increase. Peacemonger, and if you don't ask a question, I'm going to boot you because I know exactly what you're doing here. Voyager says nothing going to happen. I have no idea what you're referring to. Peacemonger in Chief says maybe your economy, but mine just fine. I think is what you're about to say. Yeah, you guys who are saying we're not in a crisis, y'all are full of it. So, you know, we're just going to start blocking people on here. Let's see here. Average Joe PG, excellent to see you again. Can I propose a message of the day? Today's could be propaganda never tells you the difference between frequency and relative frequency. Oh, that's an interesting idea. You want to clarify that? You want to expand on that, Average Joe? Mo says, right, but far left pronoun and gender dysphoria are mental illness. Are you saying that sarcastically, Mo? Gavin says, isn't inflation impossible to fix with a fiat currency? No, it is possible to fix inflation. The Biden administration fixed inflation, and then Trump started pushing it back up again because of his idiocy. Nathan Derej says, opinion on abortion. I am pro-choice, but even if you are pro-life, you should still vote for Democrats. If you're pro-life and your goal is to decrease the number of abortions that happen, you should vote for Democrats because theirs are the policies that actually decrease the number of abortions. Republicans, their policies only ever make pregnancy more dangerous for women. It does not decrease the number of abortions. It only makes pregnancy more dangerous for women. Gavin says, how did Biden fix inflation? I remember gas being $7 in California. So what you're talking about are prices, Gavin. Inflation is not prices. Inflation is the rate by which prices are increasing. And inflation was, during the Biden administration, up to 9%. It was Trump's fault that it got that high. But it's still, you know, it is a fact that it reached 9% during the Biden administration. But Biden did a lot of things. You know, he passed the Inflation Reduction Act. His NLRB was siding with the unions. His Federal Trade Commission chair, Lena Khan, was breaking up monopolies. And all of that stuff brought inflation back down to 2.4%, which is where every economist says it's like the good spot to do it. Rayon, good to see you again. Mo says, from facts, as you said, global warming, a fact. Well, it's a fact you can't change your gender. Oh, I see, Mo. So you are not being sarcastic. I see. All right, Mo. Well, here's what I would say to that. You can change your gender because frogs change their gender. Are you saying that frogs are better than people? I don't understand why you think that frogs can do something that people can't with all of our incredible brains and shit like that. Jeanette Jensen says, I am native San Diego and Los Angeles, and never have I ever seen gas at $7. Yeah, all right. Well, I think that guy's probably maybe being disingenuous, potentially. Alrighty, the dollar lost 11% of its value under Trump, says Scott, and that is accurate. Lance says, is this the comedy show you talk about? No, this is the show where I talk about politics, but I am a professional stand-up comedian. Alrighty, let's see here. Gavin says, I'm telling you it was. All right, Gavin, you know, but, Janet is skeptical. You know, I'm not going to say whether or not it is correct or not correct, but I am going to tell you that the Trump administration is causing prices to go up. It is causing inflation to go up. The Biden administration brought inflation down, and the inflation that we were suffering under during the Biden administration was caused by Trump. I'm happy to expand on any of those points if you like. Excellent questions so far, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Rayon says, VRO, I told you a month ago Trump will push India away. It happened. I don't remember you saying that, but I believe you, Rayon, and 100% it happened. You fucking nailed it. You know, his idiocy is fracturing all of our alliances and pushing them into the hands of a very willing and capable China. So we are being shut out of the global economy. The value of the dollar is cratering. The value of the American bond market is cratering. Manufacturing jobs are down. Prices are going up. It is the worst of all fucking worlds here. Right. Blue Mountain Studio says, when will MAGAs go away? Well, you know, there are a lot of mechanisms to keep people like MAGA in the world. You know, there's a lot of propaganda and misinformation and defunding education, et cetera, et cetera. Right-wing media is still prevalent and extremely well-funded by the billionaire class. So unless we get some regulation to address those issues, unless we are able to put Democrats in power long enough and strong enough for them to actually make changes, then the work of getting people out of toxic political spaces is the work that you and I are going to have to do. You know, this is part of my, you know, part of my 10 commandments is like, if we want this change to happen, then we have to do it. We can't just sit around and hope and pray that somebody else makes this change happen for us. Right, Danny's Terrible says, I pray people read books. These actions are reminiscent of Germany in the 1930s. That is quite accurate. Phil says, have you commented on the Taylor Lorenz article? Not today. I have not, Phil. Alex says, can you make the live so that I can join Yo Talk? Alex, I almost never have guests on the live, but if you stick around, if you put in a request, if you prove to me that you are here in good faith, then potentially I will let you on at some point. Let's see here. Carmine says, just got here like I missed some goodies. Yeah, the Taylor Lorenz article, it's bullshit. Like, Taylor Lorenz is full of shit. Completely. 100%. She is calling things that are not insidious dark money influence operations, insidious dark money influence operations. And she is ignoring real dark money insidious influence operations. If there is a morally virtuous billionaire out there who wants to get accurate, factual information into the world via supporting progressive content creators, there's nothing wrong with that at all, you know? The issue is in propaganda and misinformation, which the billionaire class is heavily funding on the right. You know, and adversarial nations are. Russia is giving fucking Tim Pool like $100,000 an episode or some shit like that to spread bullshit misinformation, you know? And so the fact that Taylor Lorenz would choose to frame her article in that way, it screams that what she is trying to do is make it seem like, hey, there's dark money influence operations on both sides of the political spectrum. Both parties are the same kind of bullshit, you know? And that stuff, that's just, yeah, you know, it's the same old fucking playbook of convince people that there's no good things in government or politics. There's no good politicians. They're all terrible. And that is a toxic mindset, cynical, toxic mindset that does nothing to fix the problem. Let's see here. Phil says, thanks for commenting. Haven't seen any recent vids of on your page yet. Yeah, go check out my videos. I've been posting much more regularly lately, so I definitely have stuff there. Fletch Lives Again says, why were there not people behind him in video? What people? What video? Who are you talking about? Dalton says, what do you think about the fellow with the plane and the island survivors speaking out? I am for that. Good for them. I'm proud that they have the courage to do that, knowing how, you know, certain people in this country treat women who make their accusations public. You know, it is dangerous and it makes their lives a lot harder. And, you know, I'm just glad that they have the intelligence and the bravery to take this step. Fletch Lives Again says, I love Senator Chris Murphy's first 100 days of Trump corruption video. It was filmed on the Senate floor, but why were there not people behind him in the video? I'm not really sure. Fletch Lives Again. That is interesting. The Early Morning Stoned Pimp says, what hands do politicians wipe with? I guess their dominant ones, I guess. Let's see here. Janina E. Radachowski says Trump's regime is breaking down our branches of government. Wake up, people. That is completely accurate. Owen says, I need help. Where would a person find true information about politics? So, Owen, there's two things that you should do if you want accurate information about politics. Number one is you need to avoid right-wing media at all costs. There has been a ton of data on this, and right-wing media is, by a wide margin, the least accurate and reliable media that you can consume. And so that's Fox News, Breitbart, OAN, Charlie Kirk, Ben Shapiro, Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, Bill O'Reilly, fucking all of those ding-dongs. You can basically, assume that everything they're saying is inaccurate. But as far as avoiding bias everywhere else, I say have a wide and diverse media diet. Check out some centrist media, check out some legacy media, check out some foreign media, check out some progressive media. And then, based on all that information that you get from those various different sources, you can have a better idea of what's actually going on and sort of like counteract any inherent bias that you might be experiencing via just getting your news from one source. Shaw the Pooper says, how do you feel that the fellow with the plane was working for the Israeli government to blackmail politicians? He might have been working with a bunch of different intelligence agencies, not specifically Israel's. The focus on Israeli organizations like Mossad and like AIPAC, they're so specific that they ring anti-Semitic to me. Where it's like, why are we focusing? Why? Is it possible that the Kremlin was working with the fellow with the islands as well? Is it possible that France and Australia had intelligence operations that were utilizing him as well? And people complain about AIPAC, and it's like, yeah, well, there are a ton of extremely well-funded organizations that put pressure on our politicians to adhere to their agenda. But focusing on AIPAC and focusing on the Mossad specifically, it's like, that is anti-Semitism, not criticizing the Netanyahu government, Dalton says, can you explain the Venezuela and USA conflict at the moment? I know it's complex, but I think it's important. Dalton, so, foreign affairs is not my strong suit, but I'll do my best to give you a quick rundown. So Venezuela is a very handy boogeyman for the right wing of American politics, because Venezuela is an authoritarian kleptocracy that calls itself socialist. And so they are looking at a government that is not taking care of its citizens, that is stealing money from their citizens, the way that the Trump administration is doing. But the fact that they call themselves socialist means that anything that they are doing wrong, the Trump administration can say, oh, look, socialism doesn't work. And Republicans can say, oh, look, socialism doesn't work. Let's see here. Now, as far as the Trump administration will claim that terrorist organizations and cartels are operating out of Venezuela, I don't know how accurate that is. I can't speak on that. That's outside of my area of expertise. They're a very useful boogeyman for the Republican Party. And so as part of their militarization of the globe, they have sort of launched an aggressive escalatory saber rattling competition with the government of Venezuela by sending warships down there under the auspice of we're going to stop all of the cartels in Tren de Aragua from infecting our shores with their drugs and shit like that. And Maduro, being also kind of dictatorial, is saber rattling back and flying, fucking fighter jets over the American military. The American military did destroy and kill a bunch of people in a speedboat that they were saying were Tren de Aragua, in a speedboat to bring drugs to America. But all relevant reporting is currently saying that that is not true, and that if that was Tren de Aragua, they were most likely trafficking humans, which means that the American government just murdered a bunch of innocent people who are being trafficked by Tren de Aragua. So yeah, it is wildly illegal, unethical. There's no justification for it. Yeah, you know, it's a terrifying thing that the Trump administration just unilaterally decided that those people were going to die based on no evidence whatsoever, you know. Ready, let's see here. Average Joe says, is it reasonable to opine that MAGA is everything the KKK wish they had become, or did the KKK loosely succeed in becoming MAGA? Is it reasonable to opine that the MAGA is everything the KKK wish they could become? Yeah, I mean they're intimately related. I don't know if that's exactly how they would phrase it, you know, but I don't really have an objection to either of those interpretations. Rayon says Trump set aside India ties for family's Bitcoin business with Pakistan. Did you know? Family over country. What are your thoughts? I mean, there are the analysis that I heard was that the relationship with India started fracturing because Trump wanted to take credit for the ceasefire between Pakistan and India. I'm sure that there's a lot of other things going on. There are a lot of motivating factors there, but that is the one thing I heard about it. Yeah, and it's dumb. It's fucking dumb. It's stupid. Average Joe says, "Oh, about the Taylor Lorenzo article, yeah, the article does nothing to fix the problem, but the response to the verifiable reporting puts the main complaint of Democratic voters in the spotlight. The perception of hypocrisy on a scale of 1 to 10. How necessary is it for Brian Tyler Cohen and David Pakman to get $8K a month? I feel like they were already doing okay." So yeah, again, I doubt the validity of that argument. You know, I don't believe I've heard Brian Tyler Cohen speak on this, and he is like, yeah, nothing in that article is accurate. So, yeah, I don't know if it's necessary to opine on them getting 8K a month from the billionaire class when we don't even know if that's really happening. Right. Shaw the Pooper says, LOL, this clan said it's anti-Semitism to say that the Israeli government is blackmailing the U.S. I mean, that's not what I said, Shaw the Pooper, but if you keep on saying that, then I will block you. Phil says, both of those guys have staff members who get paid. Not really sure what that's supposed to mean. Scott says, have you heard about Lutnick buying up tariff refund rights for a small percentage? It doesn't surprise me whatsoever. Nolan says, thoughts on the ongoing embargo of Cuba for not being capitalist democratic? It's extremely stupid. You know, it is increasing global tensions. It is hurting the citizens of Cuba. It is dumb. It is dumb and escalatory and part of a propaganda campaign, you know, that the right has been waging for a really long time. Marin says, Democrats and Republicans don't care about you. Why you guys argue about it still? Marin, that is a toxic and inaccurate statement that you just said. It is possible that there are bad politicians and good politicians, but when you lump them all together like that, you make it seem like there's nothing that can be done, that politics is going to be terrible no matter what happens. And there are better politicians out there. There are better political parties out there. There are better policies out there. So I would encourage you not to be cynical in that way. Phil says funding independent media is not a bad thing. I agree with that. Nathan One says, how do you think we should approach a change in healthcare? I think we need to switch to universal healthcare, but I also think that's I also think that America needs to recognize that that switch is going to be long and hard, and that mistakes will be made. And the bigger issue of how that is going to get weaponized by the right needs to be addressed as well. Yeah. Let's see here. It's the Rocketeer says, "How about those job numbers, huh?" Yeah, we're fucking. America is swirling the drain, and it is only by you and me doing the work that we will be able to stop it. Marin says the Uni Party is bad. There's few people that aren't bought out by AIPAC and donors. That is inaccurate, Marin. Again, please stop saying things like that in my comment section, or I'm going to block you, because it's inaccurate, cynical, both sides nonsense. Mr. Johnson says, how soon can we start blaming Obama's dance suit again? I mean, it depends on which political party you're in. If you're a Republican, I'm sure you never stopped. John Martinez says, all mainstream media is biased, right or left, it doesn't matter. That is inaccurate, John Martinez. Mainstream media has been proven scientifically through the data to be about 80% or 80 times more reliable and accurate than right-wing media. So, that is a wrong thing that you just said. Right, Staney is terrible. Says Republicans all cry about small government, but we interfere other countries' elections. Yeah, that's accurate. Mr. Johnson already did that one. Beginner Garden says healthcare will have to be done in phases. Primary care first, I think. There's an open conversation to be had about the best way to switch from private healthcare to universal healthcare. But I think that we need to get past the obvious yes of should we do the switch in the first place. Like that is a yes, that is a massive yes, and everybody in the country needs to get on board with that. See, Flan Marin says you are coping hard. Your mom was coping hard last night when I told her I wasn't going to fuck her anymore. Scrolling down to the bottom of the comments, Hello 13 says, is El Salvador's president good? No, he is not. He's a vicious dictator. Alrighty. The South will rise again. Do not have a lot of faith for this comment. Yeah, and trans women have been scientifically proven to be men, and I'm right wing, but all are biased. Well, congratulations. That's not a question. I don't care if you have different opinion. Oh, your profile bio says single as fuck. Why am I not surprised? Scrolling down to the bottom, Cflon says, read my question and said, nope, LOL. What was your question, Cflon? I remember you. So you think the left is the lesser of two evils? I don't think the left is the lesser of two evils. The left is the lesser of two evils. They are better than the right by a wide margin. And I'm happy to go into more details on that, Cflon, if you like. All right. Dash says, will we ever get universal health care in America? Well, we need to elect the politicians who will do that. We need to do the work of convincing people to vote for the politicians that will do that. And then when the politicians get elected, if they do that, then we will say yay. And if they don't do that, we will replace them with better Democrats instead of replacing them with Republicans who will just push the ball further down the field of not switching. Let's see here. Glory and Nate Hammer says, Glory and Nate Hammer? Glory and Nate Hammer. I don't know what that means. What is your opinion on Gavin Newsom? Says Glory and Nate Hammer. He's fine. He is completely acceptable. He is not Satan. He's not the worst person on the planet, but he's also not the Lord and Savior who will deliver us from all evil. He's fine. Alrighty. Let's see here. Val Pal says, how do we get better candidates? You vote for them in the primary. And then if they don't win in the primary, you need to vote for the better of the two options still, which, again, is almost always going to be Democrats. Alrighty. Cflon says, please elaborate without demonizing the right. Let's see here. Please elaborate without demonizing the right. The simplest way that I can make this point, Cflon, is by saying that looking at the outcomes of the political parties, looking at their platforms, looking at their politicians. And I think you'd have to be pretty deep in a right-wing rabbit hole to not recognize that the country's economy does better under Democrats, that marginalized communities do better under Democrats, that the government itself is much more serious. Our foreign policy is much more intelligent under Democrats. We're safer under Democrats. Our healthcare policy is better under Democrats. Like, the Democratic Party has done more to help people over the last 50 years than the Republican Party. And the Republican Party has done more to damage the country than the Democratic Party over the past 50 years by like a wide margin. If you want me to go into specific, policies or specific moments in history, I'm happy to do that. But, it's the Republican Party is doubling down on all the bad decisions that they have made over the past 50 years. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's such a wide margin to me. I don't know where you need to be convinced that the left is way, way, way better than the right, because it's obvious to me, All right. CryptoMe says, what do you know about Gavin's fundraiser scam? I don't know anything about Gavin's fundraiser scam. Dash says, my state just banned vaccine mandates in school. How fun is that? We like measles, I guess. If you live in Florida, there's work to be done, Dash, and I hope that you will do the work. All right. Let's see here. Do Not Go Gently says, Democrats want to give more rights to more people and Republicans want to take rights away. That is accurate. Danny is Terrible says, people, let's be real. We should never side with billionaires. They are real-life monsters. That is accurate. Crypto Me says, LOL, what a surprise. Don't really know what you're referring to. Dalton says, do you think the Constitution was written purposefully to be vague? I don't know. I'm not really a constitutional scholar. But there's very specific things in the Constitution, like, anyways. KHPN says, you are Jewish, correct? I am, and do not have a lot of faith for that interaction. M dash, no, just a regular dash. Is Joe Rogan really the last line of defense when it comes to freedom of speech? Absolutely not. No, Joe Rogan doesn't give a fuck about freedom of speech. What is he doing to stop all of the wild infringements on freedom of speech that is happening right now during the Trump administration? You know, he seems to be very upset that, you know, construction workers and gardeners are getting arrested when he thought that Trump was only going to be going after the most notorious criminals and getting rid of them. This fucking idiot. Yeah, I just can't fucking stand that guy. You know? Alrighty. Dashes, I'm quoting Joe. He says he and his comedy buddies are the last line of defense. All right, well, yeah, I could not roll my eyes harder on that dude. His entire fucking wing of the comedy community. KHPN says, as a Republican, do you think Israel is our greatest ally? I do not believe that Israel is our greatest ally. I do not. 100%. In fact, I think that they're a terrible ally to America. Kale Leach says, would you support getting rid of all parties? Not necessarily. I think there's some use to political parties. Like, it's a useful shorthand. If I know that you are a Democratic politician, I know that you most likely are for the same policies that I am for. Cflon says, Dems on the surface do seem like the more compassionate group, but I have doubts. How come, Cflon? Tell me why. Let's see here. D Fitz, 1993 says, what foreign nation has the most control over U.S. politics? Ugh. I don't know. I want to say maybe Israel, but, you know, I don't know. Yeah, I honestly don't know. All right. KP the Great says, not all Latinos are gardeners. Just saying. Yeah, I mean, I didn't say that. Callie Reach says, do you feel that having parties causes divisions? No, not necessarily. We've had parties for a really long time, and we are more divisive now because the billionaire class is flooding social media with the exact kind of propaganda to get people to fight amongst themselves instead of focusing on fighting the billionaire class. KHPN says, what do you think about AIPAC? I am against AIPAC. It is a extremely right-wing organization. D Fitz says, come on now, you know the nation with the most control over the U.S. I do not. Danny is terrible says, thoughts on RFK resigning? He won't, I know. I mean, he 100% should, and I hope that the Republicans in the Senate will find a fucking spine and actually do that, you know? Alrighty, yeah, Cephalon, the things that they try to tie to rational policies makes me have doubts. Can you be more specific, Cephalon? Shay Carell, good to see you again. I'm still running for governor of Florida. I will bring back vaccines to school if elected. You know, I hope that you can unseat DeSantis in the primary, my guy. You have my support in the primary. That is for darn sure. Alrighty. Yeah, Cephalon, please clarify, my guy. I really want to hear more about that. Crypto Me says, do you support vaccine passports? Can you be more specific, Crypto Me? Alrighty. Let's see here. Danny is terrible says Thomas Jefferson said it should be rewritten every few years to keep up with the times. I mean, it was designed in a way to be amended, you know, and we have amended it many times, you know. On the Go says, why did Netanyahu tell us to invade Iraq? Netanyahu is a right-wing extremist who wants to create an Israeli empire in the Middle East, where we get rid of all of his neighboring countries, and then Israel gets to take over all of that land. Alrighty. Danny is terrible says, I have a bad feeling Cephalon is going to bring up Ukraine. Please do, Cephalon. I'm happy to talk about that. Dash says, we should have even older presidents than Trump. Yeah, sure. Dalton says, as scared as most of us are, what are some good news that's happening in the USA? I mean, the Trump administration is losing court cases. I think the American people are waking up to how devastatingly terrible RFK Jr. is. But yeah, it's nothing is no piece of news that is coming out of America is good enough to make up for all of the bad that the Trump administration is doing. Like, we should be lighting a fire under everybody's ass to fucking do something about this, because we are the only ones who can stop this, and we fucking need everybody on board with the project, you know? Cephalon, still waiting for that. You would be surprised at my stance on that. Yeah, Cephalon, tell me what you mean by the things that they try to tie to rational policies makes me have doubts. Tell me what you mean by that. Janina E. Rajakowski says authoritarian governments are kind the world, and Trump is part of this. I don't know what you mean by our kind the world. I mean, authoritarian government is coming. Yeah, and it is. I don't think it is a coincidence that the billionaire class infuses a lot of money into spreading pro-billionaire propaganda on social media, and there is a rise in authoritarian support in various nations around the globe. Cephalon says, last comment about immigration. About immigration. Yeah, I don't know what you're referring to, my guy. What is the issue that you have with democratic policies on immigration? Fletch Lives Again says, what percent of his cabinet is not qualified? 100%. Banana Helmet says, are you accepting a request? I almost never do, Banana Helmet. But, things are pretty slow right now. We've only got 60 people on TikTok. Not a lot of comments over on TikTok and on Twitch, on YouTube. So, stick around. Maybe I'll bring you up. But right now, I just really want Cephalon to tell me about this whole immigration thing. Lisa Cal Cagano says Taylor got engaged and is dropping a new album. Yeah, that's the good news that we have in America. That's literally all that we have right now. All right, Cephalon, hit me, my guy. Yeah, let's try to do make possible. Cephalon. Sorry, just scrolling, looking for specific comments to respond to. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Let's see here. It is Friday. Harald says, watching from Denmark here. God damn, I wish I was there instead of here. Janina E. Radachkowski says, and Trump's regime's out, fourth project 2025, Heritage Foundation. Yeah, all the things you're saying are accurate, Janina, though not well typed. Cephalon says, I think my comment is being blocked. I don't know why. All right, well, do you want to be a guest? Do you want to tell me in person? Do you want to request to be a guest, Cephalon? And then I'll just have you on. You can tell me with your voice instead. Dash says, how do we push back on the belief that patriotism has been claimed as a right-wing trait? I mean, it's a complicated idea. Like, how do we reclaim certain narratives and ideas? Cephalon says, I'm at work, or I would. All right, well, think of a different way to phrase it, I guess, yeah, so how do we reclaim patriotism on the left? It's difficult, because there are people who just want to believe that patriotism is what they believe, and so there are hardcore racists out there who are like, patriotism is protecting white culture. That is what patriotism is. And I think that the way that we take down that narrative is the same way that we take down all of this toxic ideology, and that is funding education and media literacy, and recruiting a sort of phone tree method of finding the people who are in danger of falling into this propaganda misinformation rabbit hole and either rescuing them from it or keeping them from falling into it, in the first place. Let's see here. Nolan says, how do I change their view? How do you change whose view? Oh, Nolan, I see your other question there. Right. Shay Carell says, think Republicans will be able to stave off pressure to release the guy with the island files? They'll probably be able to delay better than they will be able to stop it. Dash says, I don't want to be nationalist, obviously, but I'm proud of our country for a lot of reasons. Yeah, I think it's totally fine to be proud of America for the things it's done well. I just don't think that people should be blind to the things that they have not done well. Dalton says, why are no politicians bringing up that CEOs are the reason why people from Mexico are coming from your job? Politicians do bring that up, It's just, there is this idea out there that Democratic politicians aren't saying the right thing when I hear them say that thing. And so the issue then is, why aren't people hearing that message? Why are people focused instead on this instead of that? And I think that the answer is obvious, that the billionaire class has captured all of our information spheres, and they are directing our attentions in places where it is useful for them and not for us. Bane says, there are heroes on both sides. Evil is everywhere. Yeah, but there are more heroes on the left than there are on the right. Nolan says, my parents are one non-voter and one 3X Trump voter. They are not bad people, just only watch Fox News. How do I change their view? Excellent question, Nolan. Okay, so here's the answer to that. The work of persuasion politically is long and hard. You have an advantage, though, of them being your parents, where they already know you, they love you, they respect you. And so they will listen to you more than if I just like showed up at their door and tried to start convincing them. But it's going to take multiple conversations. It's going to take a lot more listening and asking questions than speaking facts. Data is not the thing that changes people's minds. But you do have to sort of like start building a shared reality with the two of them, where you find, however far back you need to go to get to the point that you can agree on, and then build from there. If this is really a project that you're interested in, and I really hope that it is, I recommend you reading a book called The Persuaders by Anand Giridharadas. And if you want to find, you don't have to write that name down. You can just go over to my Discord. Link is in my bio. There is a section of recommendations for books and podcasts on my Discord, and that book is in there. But yeah, it's yeah, God bless you, man. I hope that you can. And if your non-voting parent would like to be on an episode of my podcast where I do the kind of deep canvassing that I'm talking about, then I would be happy to have them. Join the Discord, stay in touch. Let's pull on this thread, my guy. Let's start the work. Cephalon says apparently can't say the A word related to immigration. I don't know what the A word. Can't say A word related to immigration. God, what are you trying to say, my guy? Can you spell it out in a different way? Alrighty, Rena, thank you for being here. You're doing the Lord's work. Don't call them non-legal. Oh, interesting. Tugboat Slug says, why ask your opinion when I could just watch CNN and get the state-run media's same opinion? You really think that CNN is state-run media, and you really think that I am championing CNN talking points? Yeah, you're bananas, Tugboat Slugs. Alrighty, yes to both. All right, well, congratulations. That's not a question, so you are out of here. Okay, let's see here. Janina says people were not paying attention in Hungary. Now their democracy is destroyed. That is accurate. S.E. Morgan says the propaganda is strong in America. That is also accurate. Average Joe PG says, what are your opinions regarding lies of omission? Meaning, do you think it's a lie when the media intentionally ignores an important issue in the behest of a higher financial authority? I am against it. Yeah, 100%. Catch and kill. That is not the job of our news media. The job of our news media is to find out the truth, tell us the truth, focus our attention on the important issues. Alrighty, let's see here. Harold549 says, did you read about the botched mission in North Korea? I did not, but it is infuriating. I read the headline, and so, just based on the headline, I'm infuriated. Alrighty. Cephalon, come on, man. Let's do it. I'm sure you can figure out a way to say this without getting blocked, Likely says, who was the better president, Obama or Trump during their first term? I mean, Trump is the worst president we've ever had, so Obama by a fucking mile. Alrighty. S.E. Morgan says, if your news doesn't upset you half the time, they don't report both sides. That seems like a pretty good metric to start with. I like that. All right, everybody. Thank you for being here. We're not wrapping up quite yet, but, sometimes the comments slow down, and so I like to use that opportunity to let everybody know how much I appreciate them. All right. Stash says, DOJ said internally that they are going to redact GOP names from island files, but keep the DNC names. Yeah, they got fucking honeypotted. A dude that works for the Justice Department got honeypotted and got caught on mic saying that their plan was to redact Republican names from the island files and keep the Democratic names. I wouldn't be surprised if they put in Democratic names that weren't actually there. Likely says, what about the economy? Well, the economy, Obama saved the American economy after the Bush administration destroyed the economy. There was the financial crash that happened in 2008, and Obama got elected in 2008, so he had to clean up that fucking mess, and the Trump administration really didn't do anything in the first term except for cut taxes for billionaires, which, that supercharges the stock market, but it does nothing to help the average American. Trump was really coasting on an extremely strong economy built by the Obama administration. So 100% Trump does not deserve any credit for a good economy. He deserves credit for the shitty economy that happened because he fucked up the COVID response so hard, because he started fucking trade wars with Canada and China at the end of his administration, and Biden then had to come in and fucking clean up that mess, Alrighty, user a bunch of numbers says, why does Israel own our government? Israel does not own our government. Please stop spamming the comment with that. But I will tell you this, that AIPAC, which is a lobbying organization that lobbies to benefit the state of Israel, they're extremely well funded. And I think that everybody focusing on AIPAC instead of other well-funded organizations that try to influence the government, it kind of reeks of anti-Semitism to me. Right. M. Stod1 says, how concerning is Trump's rhetoric accusing the East of conspiring against America? It is wildly concerning, and it is, the fact that the Republican Party is not doing anything to rein him in is a massive indictment, and we should all work our fucking asses off to unelect every single one of them. Right. User 1995 says, what other countries are allowed to lobby? So AIPAC is allowed to lobby because they use a loophole. They say that they are not lobbying on behalf of Israel. They say they are lobbying on behalf of the relationship between America and Israel. I don't think it is beneficial or in good faith that they are abusing that loophole, but that is what they are doing. Elzar says, JFK was right about AIPAC, make them foreign agents. Yeah, I don't really have an objection to that at all. Chris Contardo says Republicans will win the next election. All right, well, that's not a question, Chris, so you're out of here. Scrolling down to the bottom, user a bunch of numbers says, is there an original copy of the Epstein file other than the White House's copy? I have no idea who has what information, Eoin922 says, how would you know who is the worst president in U.S. history when your family only just got here? You're really close to getting blocked, Eoin. But my family did not just get here. My grandma came here from Italy. So my mom was born here, which means that I was born here. And, yeah. So, yeah, you can miss me with that nonsense. M. Stott says, what's your university background? I went to Kenyon College in Gambier, Ohio. Average Joe PG, would a media organization or group of journalists intent on a cohesive messaging be more susceptible to lies of omission? Yeah, probably. That tracks for me. Alrighty, Likely says, who's the Democratic nominee for 2028? We are not going to know that until the primary is over, likely. Alrighty, let's see here. Fletch Lives Again says, can we still have a fair election with him in power, with all he has done and will do? So Fletch Lives Again, the Trump administration and his billionaire buddies would like you to believe that they have full control over our elections at this point, and so resistance is futile. It is not accurate, but they are going to do a lot of things to try to tip the needle in their favor. And how successful they are depends entirely on people like you and me. We have the power to stop all of the electioneering that the Trump administration is going to try to do going into the midterms and going into 2028. It is just the only question is whether or not they will get away with it because not enough people are doing enough, enough work. Scrolling down to the bottom of the comments. Let's see here. User a bunch of numbers says, how would we ever know if names were redacted if we have nothing to compare it to? I mean, if we see pages that are fully blacked out in the report, then we will know that things were redacted. Scott Clower, I mean, we could also potentially hear from whistleblowers at the FBI who are saying that they are being told to redact information from those files. Scott Clower says voting machines need to be audited and not tampered with once audited. That seems like a pretty good policy to me. Let's see here. Prod says, your opinion on Wes Moore, the Maryland governor. Heard he's made a stand against the orange ban. I don't know a ton about Wes Moore. Everything that I've heard sounds great, and so I'm glad that he's doing the work. It's David says, what side are you on? I'm on the side of the American people, which means I am a Democrat and I am a progressive. Mike says, thoughts on Dean? I like anybody that is encouraging young people to be more involved in politics and discussing politics. I don't love the debate style of political engagement. Like, it really does do a lot to forward the narrative of like the us versus them. It's the voters against each other. Where when it really should be 99% against the 1%. Alrighty, let's see here. S.E. Morgan says, don't you wish we'd vote for the best instead of waiting for perfect? I do wish that, S.E. Morgan. Alright, let's see here. Likely says, what does a progressive? Could you clean that up, Likely? User a bunch of numbers says, who's your favorite politician at the moment? Oh, I don't really have a favorite. Oh, what is a progressive? Okay, yeah, I'll get into that likely. My favorite, I don't really have a favorite politician. I just have a lot of politicians that I like. I like, you know what? I will amend that. I think if I had to pick a favorite, I would go with Katie Porter. But I like all of the young progressives. I like AOC and Jasmine Crockett and Maxwell Frost. I like the people who are just really authentic and are doing the good work of legislating, like Chris Murphy and Brian Schatz and J.B. Pritzker and Tim Walz. There's a lot of really good people doing a lot of really good work out there. Alrighty, Nick Cage, he's a sorcerer. That's pretty funny. So a progressive is, how would I define a progressive? I guess I would define a progressive by the policy priorities that they uphold. So a progressive is trying to do something about income inequality by taxing the wealthy. A progressive would like to fix what is wrong with the government instead of dismantling the government. A progressive wants to transition to green, renewable energy and reformat our cities to be walkable. A progressive believes in common sense gun control legislation. A progressive believes in the value of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Stuff like that. Yeah, that's good. John Russell says, let's talk about when Biden allowed troops into cities during COVID. He literally didn't do that, John Russell. What the fuck are you talking about? What are you talking about, John Russell? No. First of all, COVID happened under Trump. Biden took us out of COVID. Yeah, if you spam the comments with look it up again, I am going to block you, my guy. But no, the only way that the military was involved in COVID was in assisting, because we were so understaffed and we were lacking personnel and PPE and rooms for all of the people who were infected, John Russell. Yeah, fucking miss me with that nonsense. Alrighty. Lifted Flame says, why do we treat each other like this? Do you think love will conquer all in the end? I mean, you need to recognize that this is the toxic, this is what the internet has done to us, and it has done it very purposefully. And so we need to do the work of having radical empathy for our fellow citizens. We need to do the work of speaking to people in real life about this stuff so that we don't just continue spiraling into little rage machines by plugging into these, rage propaganda machines, Aiden Liao says, what are politics? Politics is how we discuss the platforms of our politicians and how our government runs. Let's see here. Abdul Kaderi says, our politicians used to be friends with each other, both sides since Trump. They've become enemies. I mean, I would argue that the radicalization of the Republican Party is the reason why they're no longer friends with each other. Kay Yeti says, that's true. My Marines and I were sometimes allowed out into the public. Oh, no. Excellent bit, Kay Yeti. Well done. All right, everybody, we are almost at an hour. We are not wrapping up quite yet, but since comments have slowed down, I just wanted to take a second to tell everybody how much I appreciate all your comments, and I hope that you guys are doing the work, because we need people doing the work, because things are fucking terrifying. The Trump administration is doing fucking extrajudicial killings of Venezuelan citizens, and it's like they're just removing people from this country illegally. People have done nothing fucking wrong. They're building concentration camps. ICE had their budget increased 360%. They're hiring people who just have a fucking vendetta. Like, who is going to protect you from this administration? Do you know what I mean? Like if ICE breaks down your door and hauls you into a fucking concentration camp, like, who can you appeal to? We are all at risk here. We are all at risk of diseases that are going to be rampant because we have a Secretary of Health and Human Services who does not believe in science and instead wants to forward his own fucking bullshit and is fucking lying in Congress's face about shit that he has done and said. Yeah, guys, we need to do the work. All of us need to do the work. Otherwise, we're fucked. Alrighty, S.E. Morgan says, sir, where is your next show? So I'm on sabbatical until the beginning of 26. I actually was just talking to Steve about his upcoming tour schedule, so I'm excited about finding out when I will be on the road, probably in January and February. Likely says, do you like what Trump did with the boat filled with drugs and narcotics? I do not. Even if it was filled with drugs and narcotics, that was the job. That was a job for the Coast Guard to stop that boat and then arrest those people, seize those drugs. You don't just get to murder people. The Trump administration doesn't get to decide when they can murder people, when somebody is worthy of being murdered. That is wildly barbaric. It is insane that they fucking did that. K80 says, just want to throw this out there. We don't have woke generals. Let's see here. Prod says, how do we fix the issues with the media without encroaching on the First Amendment? That is a huge question, Prod, and I honestly don't know the answer to that question. I think we need to start with de-incentivizing the profit motive from our news media. I think that independent financing through, taxpayer dollars would be a great way of doing that, where their incentive is just in being, factual and accurate and not chasing clicks and likes. I think media literacy is going to have to be a huge part of it also, education and stuff like that. Alrighty, Average Joe PG says, so based on my two prior questions, even without verifiable sources, it can be reasonably assumed that wealthy donors, financial backers can influence the narrative and important topics get ignored. Combine these reasonable assumptions with the fact that Chorus, the focus of Lorenz's article, conveniently ignored recruiting pro-Palestinian voices. Conveniently ignored recruiting pro-Palestinian voices. Even without that article, doesn't this information seem shady AF to you? Like the corporate Dems are lashing out like a trapped animal. That seems like a stretch to me, Average Joe PG. I don't know what their motivations are. I don't know how accurate it is that they were actively not recruiting pro-Palestinian voices. Like, yeah, that's just it is a huge pile of grasping at anything we can to make the Democratic Party seem as bad as the Republican Party and make the left seem as bad as the right. That's what that feels like to me. Average Joe PG. All right, Carmine says, how do we know who was being recruited? Carmine, about the article. I think Taylor Lorenz said it in the article. I don't know. K80 says, tie the harmful effects of misinformation to tangible damages, then litigate for the financial compensation. Oh, that's a pretty good idea. I like that. That would be my recommendation. Unfortunately, money is above morals and ethics. Yeah, I think that is totally, that's great, K80. I really like that idea, actually. Right, Lisa Calcagano said, did the Venezuelan government release a statement about the killings? I do not know, but I do know that they threatened our warships by flying fighter jets over them. Let's see here. I just read that RFK Jr. is linking Tylenol taken during pregnancy to autism. User a bunch of numbers says, do you take politics into your comedy shows? I normally do, yeah. S.E. Morgan says, do you know Tom Daddario? That name sounds really familiar. Yeah, if he's the wine rep that I used to work with when I waited tables at Landmark, then yeah, I do know Tom Daddario. Let's see here. Scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments. Alrighty. S.C. Morgan says he's a comedian from New York City. Oh, yeah, then no, I don't know who Tom Daddario is. Likely says, wouldn't the drugs kill people, so isn't better to prevent it from the start? We don't know that those drugs would kill people, likely. Yeah, we're not allowed to assume things when we're murdering people. We're not allowed to say that person was going to murder 5 people, so I'm allowed to murder them. Like you have to prove that stuff before you murder people. Alrighty, let's see here. Breaking points. Kyle Kulinski, Minority Report, Sam Piker have all stated they received nothing from them. Weird considering their audience pool. They got no email. I mean, I didn't get an email from them either. I don't think it has anything to do with my position on Palestine. I think it has to do with they were deciding to focus on other people. I don't know how Chorus works specifically. All I know is I trust Brian Tyler Cohen. He seems like a very reliable person, and he said this whole thing was bullshit, and it all seems very above board there. But I don't mind digging deeper into this, Average Joe PG. I can recognize where my own laziness in not reading certain articles was potentially clouding my judgments. But yeah, this whole thing, I'm so skeptical of Taylor Lorenz from some of her other reporting as well that I'm just like, what do you call it? I'm just shortcutting to, okay, that's all bullshit. Mia's Lovely Adventures, great to see you again. Mike says, do you think politicians like Zoran are going to be positive for our future? They are, Mike, but we have to help them. because the billionaire class is extremely powerful, and they are going to try to torpedo every single fucking one. And so that means we need to do the work of countering all the misinformation and propaganda that they're going to be putting out there, trying to take down their agendas and trying to take down those politicians. Right. All right, everybody, we are at an hour, so get your final questions in. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. If there's anything that you guys need, if you have questions that come up when the live stream is not happening, if you want to know how better to get involved, if you need help in discussing, policy or learning about this shit, like if you need recommendations, I hope that you will continue to use me as a resource, because my goal of educating more people, of recruiting more people to the cause, of unelecting every fucking Republican from president to dog catcher, it does not stop when the live stream is over. And so if there are any ways that I can be useful to you guys in being a part of this fight and recruiting other people to this fight, then please use me. Use me and abuse me, guys. Use me until I'm all fucking used up. Because if it feels this good getting used, then just keep on using me until you use me up. Anybody know what I am referencing? Okay, let's see here. What was the other thing I was going to tell you guys about? Let's get into some of these comments here. I'll send you a DM of the lady that breaks down the course thing really well. Thank you, Rita. I appreciate that. Katie says, I continue to live vicariously through your outspoken political nature while fighting how I can legally. Very much appreciate you, K Yeti, as well. Bill Withers, thank you. Do not go gently. I appreciate that. Let's see here. What else do I like to tell you guys as we are going through these final comments here? Yeah, I appreciate all the support you guys give me, and the likes and the shares and the gifts and the subscriptions. That stuff all helps me out a ton. It makes it really easy. It makes it better for me to justify when I have shows like this one that are a little bit lighter in attendance. Getting support from you guys and continuing to get comments and questions from you guys, it does make me feel like I need to continue doing this work. And so I really appreciate that. If you want to support the show financially, you can, but obviously you don't have to. I have a Patreon that you can join for as little as $1 a month. Link is in my bio. And I have a store that you can buy things from, and you can send gifts on TikTok and Twitch and YouTube and subscribe. All that stuff helps me out a ton. And I've got a bunch of videos and projects that will be coming out soon, so hopefully you guys will keep an eye out for that. If you ever want to be more informed about the things that I am up to, like go to the link in my bio and sign up for my email list, all that good stuff. But yeah, guys, today was a rough one for reading the news and hearing about all this shit, and just being like, God damn, I really hope that people do the work, because I'm scared, I'm scared. Alrighty, user a bunch of numbers says, when I win the lottery, you will know it. That is very sweet. User a bunch of numbers, I appreciate that. Alrighty, Ben Drewy7 says, am I the only one who thought Trump would lose because Vance had a beard? That's pretty funny. But yeah, I think maybe you are, All right, everybody, thanks again for being here, and thank you for your support. Do the work. I cannot stress this enough. We need to do the work, and we need to recruit other people to do the work. We got to fucking phone tree our way into having a better country, because we cannot keep on fucking living like this. And we don't have to fucking live like this. We can have a better country. We don't have to fucking worry about all this shit 24/7. The analogy that I came up with a while ago was, I want a car where I don't have to call the wheels every day and beg them not to fly off. That's what I want my government to be doing. So, yeah, guys, do the work. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. And I will see you guys next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye. Goodbye, 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 goodbye.